Everybody, we're back working on the Valiant as usual, and today I'm working on building a wiring harness for the gauges and some of the stuff in the dash, so that it'll basically just go in and everything will plug together. So I'm figuring out how that's going to work. So I'll just turn you around here and kind of show you what we're up against and what I got going on. So there's the dash, and I don't know if you can really tell from the camera, but this dash is on an angle, so it's farther out at the top than it is at the bottom by a fair bit, and you can kind of see that here where the Holley goes in and the Holley is basically flat. You can see the amount of difference in the angle. So what I did was, for my Autometer gauges, Autometer sells an angled bracket, an angled adapter that allows you to put the gauges in on an angle in situations like this. And what it'll allow me to do is basically have the gauge more flat than, like, if I just put the gauge in by itself, you see it kind of points down at the floor, which is not ideal. So what I want to do is bring the gauge, so that it's easier to read. So they make these adapters, and they go on like so, and makes the gauge a lot easier to read. And truth be told, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if it even had a little more angle to it. So what I might do is I might go over to the belt sander and just increase this angle just a little bit more, but I can't increase it too much because I'm basically going to run out of hole diameter here, so can't go much more than that. So I think I'm pretty close to that. Anyway, that's what we've got going on. So we're going to go back over to the bench, and I'll kind of show you, as I'm struggling doing things with one hand and holding the camera as usual. So this is going to go in here like so. That's going to turn up there like that. The gauge is actually going to go straight. Sorry about that. This is what editing is for. So it's going to go in there, something like that. It'd be fairly easy to read. There are 4 gauges that are going to go in here: brake pressure, fuel level, water temperature, and oil pressure. And these are sort of redundant gauges, because all of this information will be on the Holley dash, and actually a lot more will be on the Holley dash. But I just want to have, the ability to just kind of glance down at the gauges and just kind of know, without looking for a digital readout or something on the Holley. It just, for me, old school, kind of handier to do it this way. And then I'm going to have a tack mounted up here someplace with a shift light on it, and that's going to have to get wired in as well, but that'll be a little bit later. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this panel out of the dash. You can see I've got some lights. So these are left and right turn indicators. This is high beam indicator, and then this is going to turn on when my gear vendor overdrive is engaged, just as a reminder that I'm in overdrive and you're not supposed to back up when that's turned on and that sort of stuff. So I just put in an LED indicator for that. And then the Holley dash obviously goes in here, and yeah, we'll have kind of what we need. So I'm going to go back over to the bench now. I'll take you over there and I'll kind of show you what's involved. Unfortunately, the brackets that come with the gauges to mount them in a dash don't work when you use these angled adapters. So I got to make something, and I'll take you over and kind of show you what that's all about. Yeah, okay, well, hopefully you can see what's going on here. I've got this is the back side of the dash, got the gauges laid out, and when you buy these gauges, they come with a piece like this that, you know, is normally just supposed to fit over the back of the gauge. You put the nuts on it and it holds the gauge in place. Well, with the angled brackets, these don't fit. They're too long, and I actually even tried modifying one. See how I cut this one down to see if I could make it work, and it's still not going to be what we need. So what I have to do is come up with a different way of mounting these gauges, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make some little aluminum pieces like this, and what these are going to do is they'll just go on the gauge, the back of the gauge like this, and they'll, you know, press up against the back side of the dashboard. I'll put the nuts on and it'll hold them in place. So cut some aluminum strips. Got my buddy Rick to cut these in his shear so it went really quick. And I'm just going to make 8 of these, and that should get the gauges mounted. And then once I have that figured out, then I can figure out the electrical connections for the wiring and, you know, all of the other stuff. So I'm going to cut these up. I'm going to bend them, drill a hole in them, and get that done. And when we get the gauges mounted in here, I'll bring you back and we'll talk about the wiring. Okay, I thought I'd just show you real quick the fastest, easiest way I know of marking these and getting them all bent roughly evenly. The accuracy of this isn't critical because there's enough slop in the adjustment that it certainly doesn't have to be, you know, super critical. But so here's my original mock-up piece that I bent, and I just want to bend some more to kind of match this one. So I've put a little mark on here, and that's where I want to make my bend. So, whoops, sorry about that. That was my microphone that just went crazy. Let's try that again. So I've put a little mark on this first piece to kind of give me an idea where the bend needs to go. I just kind of lay them up against the square. I'll lay this straight edge over top, square it up, and again, like if this is within 1/8 of an inch or so, that's plenty accurate. But so I just mark them like that. So now what I'll do is go over to the vise, clamp these in the vise, and just bend them over. And when we get done, we'll end up with a piece that looks like this, and then I'll just put a hole in each one, and Bob's your uncle. So that's next. Okay, we're over here at the vise, and there goes the air compressor. So now that we can hear each other think again, so all I'm doing here is squaring this up so that when I bend this over, it's 90 degrees. Again, it's not super critical, but just I want the bend straight. And before someone comments, yes, I know I could do more than one at a time, but by the time I take the time to line them all up in the vise and get them all exactly where I want to bend them, I can just do them one at a time. And you know, it's again, like most things I'm doing here on this car build, I'm not on a deadline. I'm not charging somebody by the hour for what I'm doing. So, you know, I don't have to be in a rush. I can kind of take my time. And as you can see, I mean, they're coming out pretty nice. If I put an over bend in them, that's absolutely no problem. But you know, as you can see, they're coming out pretty good. So I'll just keep going and get these bent up, and then we're gonna stack them up and drill some holes in them, and they should be then ready to hold the gauges in the dash. Okay, well, we got the gauges mounted, and that's all fine. And now what I'm going to be working on is changing out the bulbs that do the illumination in the gauges. I'm not a big fan of these. I just don't like the results. And they give you these little, you know, colored condoms you can put on them. There's a red one and a green one. And I tried them both, and I don't particularly care for either one. The colors are kind of inconsistent, and I just didn't really wasn't feeling it. So what I'm going to do is get rid of these peanut bulbs, and I'm going to replace them with LEDs. And I put my LEDs down here someplace. Yeah. So I bought these Philips LED bulbs, and the only trick about these is you got to make sure you get them in the right way. So what I'm doing is I'm just inserting the bulb, and using my power probe, I'm going to ground the negative wire, and just I'll apply 12 volts to the positive wire, and if I've got it right, the bulb will light up, and I don't. So that means the bulb's in backwards. So we'll take that out, we'll turn it around, sorry, put it back in, and now we should light up. Yep, that lights up nice and bright. I'll show you what that looks like. And so that's what I'm going to use has my gauge illumination. I'm just going to do them like that. So they just go in the gauge and give them a bit of a turn to lock them in. Wow, that one's stiff. Make sure I'm not going to break something here. I'm going to have to figure out why that one doesn't want to lock in. See if it wants to lock into a different gauge. No, that connector is just tight. May have to get a pair of pliers to get that to click in for the first time. Anyway, I'm just going to go through and make sure I get all the bulbs in the correct polarity so that I can put them in the gauges, and then I can just wire all the grounds together, and then I'll wire all the commons to the dash lights, and we'll be good to go. So that's what we're doing now. Oh, as usually happens when you're doing this kind of stuff, I learned something. So if you're using these Philips LEDs and you want to put them in correctly the first time, they're consistently marked Philips on the positive side. So connect this side of the peanut bulb. So this is what the base looks like, and so this is the positive side here, right here. And you can plug that in, and it worked every time. So it worked on all four. That's how they were. So I assume that's how they're doing it on purpose, right? So now I know, learn something new every day. And a couple of these have been pretty snug to go in, but you can see I got them all in. So now it's just a matter of, you know, connecting all the grounds together and running a ground wire and so on and so forth. So we'll keep going, and I'll bring you back when we make a little progress. Okay, well, we're still obviously working on wiring and making a little bit of progress. A few things I wanted to show you. So just to kind of explain what I'm doing, this harness here is basically just for the lights in the gauges and the lights on the dash. So there's turn signals, there's a high beam indicator, and then there's an LED that comes on when I engage the gear vendor overdrive. So that's going to be on one harness, and then this aluminum panel has to go in the car without the gauges in it. So what I can do is, once I have this harness all done, I can simply take the gauges out, undo the LEDs, and the harness stays attached to the dashboard. I put the gauges back in, and I can put the LEDs back in the gauges as I'm installing them, and it should go fairly smooth. There will be another harness, and that's this piece here. This is the water temperature gauge. So it has power, ground, I think ground for the sensor, and then the 5-volt feedback or whatever it is. So this is going to be on a separate harness, and so are the wires that go to the fuel gauge, which is these three wires right here. There's a ignition wire, ground, and the sending unit. And as I've shown in other videos, I take the time to label everything. So here, I'll turn this around so you can read it. So these are all labeled, you know, ignition, sender, and ground, so that if I have to pull that gauge out, or when I put the gauge back in the car, I don't have to try and remember, was yellow the sender, was yellow positive? And you know, most of the time you can figure it out pretty easily, but it's just as easy to label these and do them that way. So that's the way I prefer to do it. Just some of the things that, you know, take a little more time that you kind of don't think about. So I'll keep working on this. I'm going to clean it up, and obviously I've got to make the other harness now that goes to here, and so these are going to go on individual plugs. This harness will all be on one Deutsch plug, so I can unplug the harness real quick, and I can take the whole dash panel out of the car if I want to really easily. And then the same thing with this gauge harness. Not exactly sure how this is going to get terminated yet. I might wait until I'm doing the bulkhead connectors. I might put this on a bulkhead connector. We'll see how that's gonna happen. But these three for the fuel gauge, they will basically connect to the fuel gauge, and then I'm going to put a 3-position Deutsch connector just right here at the back of the gauge, you know, like a foot of wire. And so rather than having to pull these individual leads off the gauge, I just unplug this Deutsch connector and be done with it. So just a little bit of update, kind of show you the thought process and what's going into it, and yeah, we'll kind of go from there. So I'm just going to keep working on it, going to get it cleaned up, going to get this thing kind of organized, and we'll bring you back when there's something worth looking at. So okay, well, I've got everything wired. It's time to test it before I put all the wires inside the Deutsch connector. So let's see, I've got my handy little power probe here, and I'll just apply some voltage. Let's see, let's do the gauge lights first. Okay, they're working. And this, I think, should be right turn. And then this should be left turn. And then this, I think, is the gear vendor overdrive light. Yep. And this should be high beam indicator. Interesting. We have some sort of like ghosted feedback there. I'm wondering if there's some AC in this power probe output. I might just test that real quick with a battery and see what happens. Let me grab a battery and I'll bring you right back. Yeah, okay, so I just have a regular 12-volt Milwaukee battery here. Stuck a couple of connectors in it so I can connect my power and ground. And let's go ahead and connect the ground. And when I lit up some of the other lights before, all of the other ones would kind of flicker with it, and I think that's because there's AC ripple in my power supply. So let's try. I know the gear vendor overdrive one. Yeah, there's nothing else in any of the other lights there. Let's have a look at a turn signal. Yeah, they're fine. Nothing else anywhere else. Yeah, those are good. And finally, let's try high beam. Yeah, nothing else lights up. So yeah, I think we're all good. Engage lights again. There we go. Oh yeah, I had the wires connected wrong. Yeah, all right, so we're good. We're all good in the hood. So everything works. So I figured I'd just show you a shot of the back. This is what it looks like. These are the pins that are getting ready to go into the Deutsch plug. And everything is pretty much ready to go. This is for the fuel gauge. This is going to plug into the harness that goes back to the fuel tank. And then this, get it out from under all the tools. This is the harness from the water temperature gauge. It's got to get power and ground, and eventually it's going to go up to the sending unit under the hood. But this wire is probably going to have to be extended, so I'm not going to really mess with that right now. I'll wait till the dash goes in, and then I'll figure that out when I get to it. Anyway, that's how that's going to work. So everything is kind of tied up, and everything should fit nice inside the car when we get it in there, and it's clean and tidy. And when I put the gauges in, there's no question about where everything goes. This plug will stay connected to the fuel gauge, so all I have to do is plug that in when I get in here. So I think everything should be fine. So that's basically the dash wired. So now we can start on the other stuff. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll bring you back when we move on to something new.